I am still haunted by what I found at Ellen's mansion after she fled. I was in a storage room where I found this plastic inside the crate. It was still wet when I touched it, warm, sticky like it had been sealed in a rush. There was hair caught in the tape, and a smell I still can't describe without gagging. I knew right then I wasn't supposed to be down there, that this wasn't just some leftover storage from a celebrity moving overseas. It felt clinical, prepared, and it was still active. So let me ask you something, and don't answer unless you've really thought about it. What would you do if you found something so sick, so calculated, that you knew speaking up would get you buried next? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you think silence is the only thing keeping people like her safe, then share this and subscribe. Because what I found in Ellen's house wasn't abandoned. It's more evil and powerful than that. I've worked in estate handling for a long time. Rich people call us when someone dies, divorces, disappears, or needs a house cleared out without leaving a trace. We're the quiet ones, the ones who come in after the headlines, after the lawyers, after the social media scandals. We catalog what's left behind, keep it clean, and ask zero questions. That's what they pay us for: privacy, efficiency, discretion. I've done jobs for retired rock stars, ex-royals, a senator's mistress who faked her own death. I've seen private theaters, underground safes, whole rooms lined with velvet and mirrors, and things I'd rather not remember. But none of it, not even the worst of it, prepared me for what I walked into at Ellen's place. The call came through a third-party firm based out of Santa Barbara. They didn't mention her name at first, just said the property belonged to a high-profile client who had fully relocated abroad and wanted her last U.S. home cleared out before it hit the market. I only found out who it was when I saw the gate. That ridiculous curved driveway, the modern white stone exterior. The landscaping was still perfect, even though the house hadn't been lived in for months. The inside was already staged, minimalist, sterile, like no one had ever sat on the furniture. They told me everything sensitive had been removed already. They said it was just final walkthrough stuff. Closing closets, labeling boxes, scanning for anything the lawyers might have missed. And for a while, that's all it was. A few luxury items still tagged, an unused coffee bar with mugs that looked untouched. Some weird decor choices, sure, but nothing I hadn't seen in dozens of other rich people's homes. Then I got to the cellar. I almost missed it, tucked behind the kitchen pantry. No label on the door, just a heavy latch and a cold draft that shouldn't have been there. The air changed when I opened it, dense, still, like it had been sealed off from the rest of the house. My phone lost signal almost immediately. But I kept going. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to believe I could handle whatever was down there. Or maybe because part of me already knew this wasn't just another celebrity cleanup job. This was something else. And I had just walked into it. It wasn't the kind of cellar you'd expect in a house like that. The walls weren't lined with racks of wine bottles or custom shelving. There were no LED strips, no polished finishes. Just rough, unfinished concrete that didn't match the clean, modern lines of the rest of the house. No light switches either. Only a motion sensor bulb that flickered when I stepped in, like the space was waking up after a long sleep. And the moment that door closed behind me, the temperature dropped. Not a little. It felt like walking straight into refrigerated air. I told myself it was for wine storage. That maybe Ellen had planned to install something down there but never got around to it. Still, that didn't explain the floor. There were industrial scuff marks. Thick tire streaks across the cement like something heavy had been rolled in and out again and again. The walls weren't bare either. One side had metal hooks bolted into the concrete at even intervals, not low like for shelving, but high, near head level, some of them with frayed plastic ties still hanging. There was a faint smell too. Not strong at first, but just sharp enough to stick in my throat. Chemical, metallic, And underneath that, something sour and earthy, like rotted fruit or dried sweat sealed in plastic. I kept walking because I didn't know what else to do. There was a corridor at the back, short and narrow, like an afterthought, and something about the symmetry was off. The walls curved ever so slightly inward, like the space had been carved out by hand, then reinforced with steel plates behind the concrete. I ran my hand along the wall as I moved, and that's when I felt the seam. A narrow break in the surface, too clean to be accidental, hidden behind a rolling shelf unit loaded with empty glass bottles and what looked like sterile packing tape. Before I tell you what was behind that wall, I want to ask you something, and I mean it seriously. Not as some throwaway comment. Just picture this for a second. You're standing alone in a house no one lives in anymore. You've been told everything's been cleared out, but you find a sealed off room with industrial locks, hidden behind shelves that move too smoothly. The air is cold. The lights are motion triggered. You're already past the point of turning around. So tell me, what would you do? Would you keep going? Would you record it? Would you pretend you didn't see it and walk out like nothing happened? I need to know. Drop it in the comments, because I still don't know if I made the right choice. I shouldn't have touched the shelf. But I did. And when it slid open like it had been built to move, I saw the door behind it, metal, keycard reader, fingerprint panel caked in dust. It looked like a security checkpoint inside a warehouse, not a private home. But it wasn't secured anymore. The crowbar lying on the floor told me someone had already broken through, and whoever they were, they hadn't come back to lock it up. I stood there for longer than I'd like to admit, breathing too loud, palms sweating, trying to convince myself I wasn't about to step into something I couldn't undo. But I went anyway, because by then, something in me knew this wasn't abandoned. It was just waiting. The smell hit me first. Cold plastic, disinfectant, and something darker beneath it. Organic, wet, like old meat thawed too long in the sun. The lights buzzed before they flickered on one by one, revealing a space that didn't belong in any home. Industrial flooring, drains in the concrete, a wide steel workbench with rolls of packing wrap, latex gloves, a barcode scanner, and empty thermal crates stacked 6 high against the back wall. There were folders open across the desk, like someone had been interrupted mid-process. And next to the table, blinking softly in the silence, was a shipping scale. Still plugged in, still active, still weighing something that wasn't there anymore. At first, I didn't touch anything. I just stood there, arms stiff at my sides, listening to the hum of the lights and the distant whine of some kind of fan behind the wall. The air felt filtered, cold in a way that wasn't accidental. The crates along the back wall weren't boxes. They were insulated containers with thick foam linings, stainless steel hinges, and digital locks. Most of them were open, empty, wiped clean. But one near the end was closed and tagged a red sticker on the latch that said, LD C2 Bao. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The plastic wrap left on the table, the used gloves bunched in the corner bin, the industrial tapes still stuck in the sealer. All of it told me the same thing. Something had been packed here. Recently, I started taking pictures. Not because I planned to expose anyone. I didn't know what I was doing. It was instinct. Proof, in case someone tried to say this was all in my head later. I kept the flash off. Every sound I made felt too loud. Every creak of the floor, every breath, it all bounced back at me like the room was listening, watching. There was a binder half, shoved beneath the table, dog-eared and water-damaged, but still legible. I flipped it open, careful not to smudge the pages. It wasn't written like a normal log. No names, just dates, weights, a set of 3 letter codes, and next to each one, a percentage marked BODY in neat black ink. Some had notes like cosmetic intact or partial rupture. One was marked recovered DN 42 low compliance redirected. I don't even know what that means, but it felt procedural, cold, like whoever wrote it had done this 100 times before. Then I saw the wall panel. It was tucked into the corner, behind a standing cabinet filled with what looked like expired medical gloves and vacuum-sealed liners. I almost missed it. Just a small screen, flush with the concrete, no labels. I reached toward it, and it came to life without me touching anything. Just lit up with a black and white security feed, 6 separate camera angles. One showed the room I was standing in, empty, live feed. But one of the other angles showed what looked like the garage. Another showed a hallway I hadn't seen before. And one, farthest right, showed what I swear was a different room entirely. Similar structure, but not this house. Same layout, same tables, same crates, but different walls. And a different person standing at the bench. They weren't moving, just staring at something on the table, back to the camera. The image flickered, then froze. The screen went dark. I stepped back like it had burned me. The cabinet rattled. For a second, I thought someone was in there with me. But it was just me. Just the fan. Just the weight of something I couldn't name, yet tightening around my chest like a rope. That's when I knew this wasn't something Ellen built alone. This wasn't just some twisted room for personal use. This was a piece of something bigger. A node in a system. She might have lived here, laughed here, filmed her smiling monologues up in that sunlit living room. But beneath it, behind it, threaded into the bones of this house, there was another reality, a colder one where people weren't people anymore. Just numbers, weights, compliance scores, and the worst part, none of it looked rushed. None of it looked hidden. It was organized, measured, as if someone else was expected to pick up where she left off. I stayed in that room longer than I should have. Not because I was investigating, not because I was brave. I stayed because I couldn't figure out how to leave without falling apart. My legs wouldn't move the right way. My fingers kept twitching like they needed something to hold on to. I must have read that binder 3, maybe 4 times, flipping pages just to feel like I was doing something useful. Like understanding it would somehow make it less monstrous. But it didn't. The more I read, the more it felt like I'd stumbled into a routine. Something practiced, streamlined. There were initials I recognized. Not fully, just partial matches. People who had passed through Ellen's world. One I'm sure belonged to that viral kid dancer from years ago. Another was marked CV, with a wait listed twice, once full, once reduced, as if they had been, I don't know. I still can't bring myself to say it out loud. Eventually, I did open the crate. I told myself I had to. That I needed to see what was inside to make any kind of sense out of what I'd found. That was a lie. I opened it because I couldn't walk away from it. Something about the silence, the stillness. It started to feel like the room was daring me. I unlatched the lid slowly. It hissed when I cracked the seal, like pressure had built up inside. The plastic liner had already been punctured. There was no ice left, just residue pooled at the bottom. Thick, pinkish, streaked with a yellowish film that clung to the edges. The smell that came up wasn't like anything I've ever experienced. It was like hospital disinfectant mixed with spoiled meat, sweet at first, then sharp enough to make my throat close. I had to step back and lean against the wall, gagging into my sleeve, while the lid sat open in front of me like a wound. Inside the plastic, there were pieces. I won't describe them. I won't go into what was still intact or what looked processed. But I will say this, it had been wrapped with care. Whoever packed that crate hadn't done it in panic. They'd done it by the book. And somewhere in that binder, I'm sure there was a matching entry, a label that broke it all down into weights and parts and percentages. Like it was cargo. Like it was nothing more than a shipment. I couldn't breathe, couldn't cry, couldn't scream. I just stood there shaking, looking around that room, and realizing that someone had stood in this same spot dozens of times before me, maybe hundreds, and no one had stopped them. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't madness. It was procedure. I didn't hear the knock at first. It was soft, deliberate, not from above, from the hallway behind the metal door I'd entered through. One single knock, then silence. Not urgent, not threatening, just acknowledgement. like someone letting me know I wasn't alone. I grabbed my phone and backed out slowly, never turning my back to the crate. I didn't run. I don't think I could have. It felt like the air itself was thicker now, like it didn't want me to leave. When I made it to the cellar door, I shut it without looking back, locked it, sat down right there on the floor in the kitchen, and shook until my hands stopped moving. That knock wasn't Ellen. I don't think she was even in the country when I was there. But someone was. Someone who knew that room, knew the sounds it made, knew how long I'd been down there, and they waited until I'd seen enough before making themselves known. Whoever was supposed to handle that crate, I don't think they were far. I think I walked in between drop, off, and pickup. And I think the only reason I'm still here, this is because I left before they could decide what to do with me. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I drove for hours without a plan, just back roads and gas stations and long, empty stretches of highway where I could pull over and breathe without thinking someone was following me. I kept checking my rearview mirror like a compulsion. Every pair of headlights felt like they were too steady, too controlled, like whoever knocked on that cellar door had waited long enough to get a good look at me. And now they were following, just close enough to keep me nervous. I didn't even know if that made sense. But that's what it felt like, that I had crossed into something I wasn't meant to see, and the world around me had started bending to punish me for it. I called the firm that contracted me the next morning, told them I found a sealed sublevel, told them there were crates, chemicals, packaging materials, nothing specific, just enough to push it toward concern. The woman on the phone didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just paused, then asked if I had documented anything. I said no. She said good, then told me the job was complete. "You've been paid," she said, like that was the end of it. No follow-up, no acknowledgement of what I'd walked into. Just a soft click as the line went dead. That was when it really started to sink in. There wasn't going to be any investigation. No hazmat teams. No property freeze. Whoever owned that room still owned it. And they'd already decided I wasn't a threat. As long as I kept quiet. I stayed in a motel off Highway 154 for 2 nights. Curtains closed, TV off, lights dimmed. I kept my phone powered down and hidden in the microwave. I know that sounds paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening. That something had changed. I didn't feel like I was being watched exactly. It was worse than that. I felt like I'd already been seen. Like my name had been added to a list somewhere, and now it was just a matter of time before someone came to erase it. The worst moment came on the second night. I woke up around 2 a.m., drenched in sweat, and my laptop, the one I always kept zipped in my duffel, was open on the desk. Not stolen, not wiped. Just sitting there, the lid propped, as if someone had opened it to read through, and then left it exactly the way they found it. I checked everything. My folders, my camera roll, my backup drive. And the only thing missing was the set of photos I'd taken in the shipping room. They were gone. Cleanly removed, not even traceable in the recycle bin. Just deleted, like they had never existed. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat by the door with my motel key, clutched in one hand, and a pair of scissors in the other, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. That room wasn't abandoned. That knock wasn't random. And now that I'd walked through it, touched it, documented it, even for a few seconds, I was marked. I thought about going to the police. But how do you report something you can't even explain? What would I say? That a former talk show host had a secret basement full of refrigerated crates and body percentage logs. That someone knocked from the inside after I opened one. That my evidence was remotely deleted in the middle of the night by someone who didn't even need to steal my device to do it. You know what happens when you walk into a station with that kind of story? You disappear twice. Once from the system and once from memory. I've seen it happen before. A guy I used to work with found something during a cleanup in Beverly Hills. Not even half as bad as what I saw. He made a few calls. Got arrested for trespassing. He's still locked up. No trial. No lawyer. Just gone. So I stayed quiet. I paid cash for the room. I left the state. And ever since then, I've been waiting. Not to feel safe. Not for answers. Just to know when it's finally my turn. If you're listening to this, and you've ever worked in a house like that, if you've ever found something that made your blood run cold and were told to walk away, don't let them convince you it was nothing. Drop a comment. Say what they told you not to say. If you think people should know what's hiding behind the smiles and the PR, share this and subscribe. Because I'm not the first person who's seen it. I'm just the one still breathing long enough to talk. I used to be good at forgetting. That's what makes you last in this line of work. You see something strange, something dark, something that doesn't line up, and you let it slide. You wrap it up, label the box, get your signature, and move on. But after that house, after that room, I couldn't forget anymore. It wasn't just stuck in my head, it was stuck in my skin. Everything felt wrong. Every sound too sharp, every conversation too staged. I couldn't walk into grocery stores without checking the exits. Couldn't sit through traffic without scanning every window for faces I'd seen on the monitors. I was unraveling slowly, and the worst part was I knew no one could help me because no one would believe me. Hell, even I barely believed it sometimes, and I was the one who lived it. I moved 3 times in the first 2 months, changed my number, switched to cash, started staying in motels that didn't ask for ID, places that smelled like mildew and bleach, where the walls were too thin and the nights lasted too long. I kept waiting for something to happen, for someone to knock again, for my name to show up in a headline, for a black SUV to idle outside my door a few minutes too long. Nothing came. But the silence wasn't comforting, it was a message. They didn't need to come for me, because I was already gone. Work dried up. Not officially. No one blacklisted me on paper. But the calls stopped coming. The firms I used to contract for said their books were full. The connections I'd built over 10 years ghosted me without a word. It was like someone reached in, flipped a switch, and erased me without even breaking a sweat. And I just let it happen. Because deep down, I didn't want to step back into anyone else's house ever again. I started drinking more than I should have. At first to sleep, then to blur. Then just to feel something different. I'd wake up with the taste of metal in my mouth and flashes of that room bleeding into my dreams. I'd see crates when I looked at parking lot dumpsters. Hear the buzz of those lights when I closed the fridge. I even started seeing faces I couldn't place. Young, scared, silent. None of them ever spoke. They just looked at me like I was supposed to do something I never did. There were moments when I thought about going back. Not to report it, just to see if it was still there, just to know I hadn't made it up. I drove near the property once, 6 weeks after the job. The gate was chained shut, security sign posted, cameras mounted where there hadn't been any before. The windows were blacked out. No cars in the drive. It looked more abandoned than before, but it wasn't empty. I don't know how I know that, but I do. Something's still there, or someone. And me, I'm not a person anymore. Not really. I'm just what's left after the denial burns off and the fear settles in your bones like ash. I drift. I stay moving. I don't use my real name. I don't talk about this to anyone, not in person, not without noise in the background. And sometimes, when I pass a house too perfect, too quiet, I wonder if there's another room underneath it. Another sealed floor. Another knock waiting behind the wall. I think Ellen got out before they turned on her. I think her exit wasn't a fallout. It was a handoff. A trade. She did her part, and someone else took her place. And I think the house was never really hers to begin with. She just kept it ready. I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't really keep track. Time doesn't move in the way it used to. Mornings, meals, they're just markers to remind myself I still exist. I used to think memory was something that faded on its own, like dust settling over furniture left too long. in the dark. But this doesn't settle. It doesn't blur. It just sharpens with time, like whatever I saw down there wants to stay alive in me. Like I was chosen to hold it when no one else would. I don't have a job now. I work just enough to keep gas in the car and a roof over my head for a few weeks at a time. I don't stay in one place. Don't use the same name more than once. Most days, I don't speak unless someone forces me to. And even then, I keep it short. Nothing personal. I've learned people don't ask questions if you stay quiet long enough. They just make up their own story about you. Sometimes they think I'm an addict. Sometimes a runaway. Once, a man at a diner told me I looked like someone who'd buried a kid. I didn't correct him. I just let it sit there between us like smoke. I watch the news sometimes, not for information, just to see who's still smiling, who's still playing the game. Ellen's name doesn't come up much anymore, just old clips, flashback montages, sometimes an anniversary reel of her final show, clean and polished, as if none of the allegations ever happened, as if she walked away untouched. But I know better. I know what was left behind. I know what was built beneath that house. And I know that kind of thing doesn't just vanish. It gets passed on, rebranded, hidden in plain sight. The worst part isn't the silence. It's the acceptance. No one wants to hear about these things unless they come wrapped in fiction. If I had made this into a screenplay, people would call it brilliant. Disturbing, but clever. But because I'm just some man you've never heard of saying it like it really happened, they'll dismiss it. Say I need help. Say I'm bitter. Say I'm making it up. Maybe I am bitter. Maybe I'm worse than bitter. But I'm not crazy. I didn't imagine that room. I didn't imagine the smell, or the knock, or the scale still blinking in the silence like it was waiting for something else to weigh. I didn't imagine the crate was still warm when I opened it. Those things were real, and someone else. Many people probably knew about them, helped make them happen, covered them up. So no, I don't want closure. I don't want justice. I'm too far past all that now. What I want is for it to matter. For even one person out there to look at a perfect celebrity mansion and wonder what's underneath it. To ask why these people keep getting bigger, richer, more untouchable, while the rest of us are left choking on the things they leave behind. I used to care about protecting myself now. What are they going to take from me? My name, my safety. That's already gone. I'm not telling this for attention. I'm telling it because I need to know I'm not the only one who saw something they weren't supposed to. I need someone else to say, I remember too. And if you're one of them, if you've ever been near that world, worked behind those gates, walked into a room and felt your stomach turn before your mind could catch up, then say something. Because silence never saved anyone. Don't forget to like, share, and also subscribe, because ethos isn't the end of spilling some hard, cold truth. It's only the beginning.